We are talking about Barbarian Queen 2, The Empress Strikes Back. This one directed by Joe Finley and came out in 1990, once again by the Concord Entertainment, Roger Corman's production company. And this one once again stars Lana Clarkson, who is kind of reprising her role from the original Barbarian Queen movie. But this one really doesn't kind of follow continuity with the first one, which we'll come on to. But I want to talk about Lana Clarkson herself first of all. Standing at 6 foot, she was perfect for these kind of like Amazon sort of style roles, and really actually shone in these kind of sword and sorcery. Apparently she was a real kind of convention sweetheart as well, really spending a lot of time with her fans and stuff. Now the reason why I bring this up, because you may or may not know, Lana Clarkson was actually murdered in 2003 by music producer Phil Spector, who got convicted of second-degree murder. And yeah, so it's obviously just the kind of, I did mention it in the first movie review, but yeah, it's a shame obviously her life was cut short. She died at the age of 40, and yeah, you know, so rest in peace Lana Clarkson for giving us lots of kind of like fantasy roles. It's just a real shame, because obviously she really did kind of like was pretty good in this role, despite the fact obviously it's kind of a low budget B movie series. But anyway, let's talk about the actual movie itself. Like I've said, this doesn't actually follow on from the original movie. On is Frank Degorino's kind of prince character, and instead the actual backstory here seems to have been changed significantly. In the first movie, she was kind of a princess of like a kind of a tribe, but here she has, it seems to be, she has living a life more in luxury as a kind of princess of a castle. And we learn at the beginning of her movie that her father may have been killed in kind of a battle somewhere, and the throne is seized by the kind of like the ward basically, and kind of wants power for himself, and ultimately wants to kind of ostracize Lana Clarkson's character. And there's a kind of a magical scepter that she only can unlock, and he wants that. Anyway, she kind of manages to escape after she's kind of like been ordered to be put to death, and kind of joins up with a kind of local group of rebels, and then ultimately tries to kind of like fight the power. So this actually reminds me a lot of the Robin Hood legend. I don't know if it was actually based on this. This was written by Howard Cohen and Lance Smith. So I don't know if the Robin Hood legend was actually an inspiration for this story, but it does seem like it. We have this group of rebels with a kind of a key sort of like quartet, I suppose. You know, who are kind of like the merry women, I suppose you would say, and they kind of lead this kind of like this band of rebels on various kind of attempts. There's even a scene where we have them in disguise, kind of like getting kind of into the castle, etc., in the castle gates, while the bad guys have set a trap for them. It's very Robin Hood. Now, this movie actually gets a lower rating on the IMDb than the original one, but I've got to say, I think this is a better film. For a start, the editing is a lot better. The first one, the editing was absolutely awful. The editing here is a lot better. Music by Chris Young, I thought was very good. And I've got to say, like I said, Lana Clarkson is great in this role, and I actually think there are some okay performances from some of the other actors. On a B-movie level, I am not saying they are going to they're standing up there with Meryl Streep or anything like that, but I've got to say there was some kind of like, some competent acting here. Yeah, some of it's kind of OTT, and I'm not saying the editing is great, but it's better than the original. This movie has one main criticism, I would say, is in the fact that it really just kind of ignores the first film. And even though Lana Clarkson's character is the same character, it just ignores it. But the thing that really bothered me about this film more than anything else is that we're told basically that Lana Clarkson's father was a good king, and he was kind of, he ruled the kingdom in peace, and as soon as this kind of new guy takes over, the whole kingdom seems to turn into evil assholes. Just kind of like a job of a hat, and it just seemed a little silly. I mean, we're talking in a kind of, this was a 1990 film, so there's kind of less things here that they're not too worried about. But yeah, it just kind of bothered me that the whole of the kind of army, just a job of a hat, seems to turn evil just because there's what other guys sort of taking power of the throne. it would have maybe, you would have liked to have been a little bit more sophisticated than having that and having a little bit more kind of division within the kind of the palace itself. But I've got to say, I thought this movie actually had a little bit more plot than the original film, and has a little bit more kind of like story elements within that. For example, the kind of our bad king, if you know, the new one, he has this kind of like young daughter who ultimately Lana Clarkson's character thinks that is her friend, but ultimately betrays her and ends up being this kind of like really kind of like evil little child who kind of toys with kind of like the male lead, this kind of handsome knight, and kind of like wants to kind of like you know, essentially kind of use him as a toy. And there's an interesting twist of what happens with her, I've got to say. There's kind of like you know, it's quite poignant, I have to say, her fate and what ends up happening with her father for quite an interesting thing. There's also some quite interesting little sub-characters here. I mean, none of them are very well developed, but so if we look at kind of like Lana Clarkson's kind of merry men or merry women, there's kind of there's one that which has got like her throat's been slit, so she can't talk, but she's kind of like this really sort of tall woman who's good with a bow. And then there's other kind of like a kind of main psychic, if you like, who's this kind of like sort of bit of a kind of a thief, and then there's this clumsy one as well. I don't know. It just has they have a little bit more character, even though they're kind of their screen time is relatively limited. Yeah, they have to do a bit more screen time. I mean, just going back to the negatives, the fight scenes here are piss poor. Let's be honest, and the choreography is absolutely awful. And there are some kind of quite shitty sort of stunts. There's a scene, for example, where one of the kind of the leader of the bad knights is kind of like he's kind of captured with a rope and then hung up on this tree, and the rope is literally just on his shoulders, and you know he's not going to just slip out. It's obviously the stunt is that it's obviously connected to his back somewhere, but it just looks silly. There's no attention to detail basically. So this movie's obviously kind of made sort of quickly and cheaply, and just kind of things like that, small things. They've just got, nah, no one's going to notice, no one's going to care. Like I said, it was a kind of a different time. Maybe people weren't quite as picky back then as maybe they would be now. There was no YouTube back then, so no one would kind of like call them on their shit. But you know, it just seems that some kind of that will do. A bit of attitude kind of behind the camera there to a certain degree. But I have to say, I actually thought this was definitely a stronger movie than the first one. Lana Clarkson excels, and it's kind of like a leading lady. There's again quite a lot of nudity in this one. So obviously it's quite kind of an adult scene here, quite adult scenes. And yeah, but I enjoyed it. I thought the plot was better than the first one. You know, it has a bit more kind of like interesting character moments than the first one, and probably is on par with like Amazon's maybe. So I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.